evening, and thank you for joining us to Monday, May 24th, West Clermont School Board meeting. Mr. Romano, roll call.
Mrs. Brinkman.
Present.
Mr. Rudy.
Present.
Mr. Schaff.
Present.
Mrs. Delaney.
Present.
Mr. Chumley.
Present.
All present.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Adams.
We have Dr. Fultz today and a lobby full of the master of the universe teachers. That's what we'll call them. And so he's going to present for you guys the work that they've been doing really over the last 2 years. We have some people here tonight that did this in 1920, and we had another group finish in 2021, which no matter which year they did, it was absolutely incredible for them to jump through these additional hoops to get the credentials for a master teacher. So Dr. Fultz, take it away.
Thank you, Mrs. Adams. Just a quick summary of what master teacher means. A master teacher demonstrates excellence inside and outside of the classroom through consistent leadership and focused collaboration to maximize student learning. A master teacher strives for distinguished teaching and continued professional growth, as specified by the Ohio Standards of the Teaching Profession. In order to be a master teacher, teachers must demonstrate the following characteristics. They must understand student learning and development and respect the diversity of the students they teach. They are aware and understand the content for which they have instructional responsibility. They understand and use varied assessments to inform instruction, evaluate, and ensure student learning. They plan and deliver effective instruction that advances the learning of each individual student. They create learning environments that promote high levels of learning and achievement for all students. They collaborate and communicate with students, parents, other educators, administrators, and the community to support student learning. They assume responsibility for professional growth, performance, and involvement as an individual and as a member of the learning community. To be designated as a master teacher in Ohio, eligible educators must clearly demonstrate each of the following criteria that demonstrate the Ohio standards for the teaching profession. Master teachers will achieve exemplary scores in 4 of the 5 areas of the scoring guide. One of the areas is consistent leadership. Master teachers ensure student learning and well-being by participating in decision-making and initiating innovation and improvements for school change. They are leaders who empower and influence others. They engage in a variety of leadership roles and perform thoughtful stewardship responsibilities for the school, community, and profession. Focused collaboration. Master teachers work with educators, students, and families and communities to create relationships, share knowledge, practice responsibility, communicate effectively, and support student learning. They respond to the needs of their colleagues and students in a timely and competent manner. Distinguished teaching. Focus on students and environment. Master teachers analyze individual and group student development to connect instruction to students' needs, interests, and prior knowledge. They strive to create an environment that engages learners in inquiry, promotes high levels of learning for all students, and creates a culture of civility and success. Distinguished teaching. They focus on content, instruction, and assessment. Master teachers have a deep and reflective understanding of the academic content that they teach. They use multiple assessments to evaluate student learning and inform instruction. They continually reflect on student outcomes and make decisions to promote high levels of learning for all students. And finally, continued professional growth. Master teachers engage in continuous professional development and reflection. They use multiple resources to shape the focus and goals of their professional development, including student learning, assessment data, research best practices in schools, and district goals. They evaluate the professional growth, understanding, and application of knowledge and development in an appropriate professional plan. As Mrs. Adams mentioned earlier, the following individuals being recognized this evening have put in countless hours and dedication to their profession of teaching to enhance the academic growth of their students by meeting all the qualifications that make master teachers of the craft. Please help me in congratulating the following individuals as they receive their status of master teacher. We'll start with the teachers that gained this status in 2019-2020 school year. The first one I want to recognize and bring forward is Jada Kennedy. She is a Willowville reading specialist. Kevin Jones, her principal, writes about her. Jada is the consummate professional. She's a highly skilled reading specialist who tirelessly works with her students and gives them the greatest skills they need to be for their adult lives, the ability to read. What I am most proud of is that Jada puts her kids first, and she comes to school every day to give 100% of her heart and soul to support the challenge and challenge our kids on the pathway of becoming excellent readers. Thank you, Jada. Next. Next, I'd like to recognize Jeannie Hornberger. She's a 4th grade ELA teacher at Clough. All right. Clough Principal Kevin Thacker writes, Mrs. Hornberger is relentless in her pursuit to help children achieve. She goes above and beyond. Once again, this year, she led what she titled the Breakfast Club. This club meets before school so that Mrs. Hornberger can help students with their reading skills. She makes connections with her students that last a lifetime. Thank you, Ms. Hornberger. And then a renewal from 1920 is Amy Sweeney, WT grade 2 teacher. Mrs. Sue Littman Hall writes, Mrs. Amy Sweeney takes pride in building a classroom community of learners and thinkers. She reflects on where her students are and creates a safe space for each of them to reach their potential. Mrs. Sweeney is an active team member who listens, supports, and advocates for the entire school community. Thank you, Mrs. Sweeney. Here are our 2019-2020 master teachers. So if you just want to give a high five, air high five, or wave to the group.
Thank you.
All right. So next, I'm going to introduce our 2020-2021 school year master teachers. Lindsay Mayhouse is an intervention specialist at West Clermont Middle School. She was going to come, but I was just informed that she had something happened in her family, so she was not able to attend. But I want to read that Mr. Hudson writes, Ms. Mayhouse does a great job of helping our special education students achieve what they need to be successful. Mrs. Mayhouse helps plot points for her learners to help them feel success while constantly and continuously learning at the same moment. So thank you, Mrs. Mayhouse. She was an initial this year, so the rest of our list are master teachers who have renewed. This is their 2nd time renewing, so they've been with us for a little while in this designation. So if I could ask Kendra Ackerman to come forward, grade 8 science teacher at West Clermont Middle School. Mr. Hudson writes, Mrs. Ackerman works every day for our kiddos and staff to be successful. Mrs. Ackerman grabs a shovel and does what needs to be done to help build the culture at West Clermont Middle School. Mrs. Ackerman continues to grow her craft for herself and others around her to be a learner every day. Thank you. All right, next we have Robin Blamer, 3rd grade teacher from Clough. All right. Kevin Thacker writes, Mrs. Blamer is a trailblazer in regards to making the instructional shift to blended learning. When the pandemic hit last school year, she recorded herself reading an entire book. Students could then watch and listen to her read the story via the internet at their own pace. She has continued this year providing high-quality instruction in a blended learning format while holding high expectations for herself and her students. Thank you, Ms. Blamer. Next, if I can ask Rena Ford to come forward. Okay. Jessica West writes, Mrs. Ford has consistently served as a strong instructional leader both at West Clermont Middle School and specifically this past year in the West Clermont Online Academy. She actively supports her colleagues' growth as educators through collaborative planning and mentorship. Mrs. Ford cares deeply about the academic success and social-emotional well-being of her students, and this is evident through her interactions with students and the ways in which she makes her classroom an inviting space for adolescents. Thank you, Ms. Ford. Okay. Courtney Heichenfeld. Christy Otten writes, Courtney has strong connections with students that she teaches. Her desire to continuously improve has led her to become a reader for the College Board of AP Literature and Composition, one of the courses that she teaches. Courtney seeks out other opportunities to learn and collaborate with her colleagues, working closely with our instructional technology and literacy coaches over the past 4 years to continuously innovate in the classroom and make learning engaging for her students. Thank you, Ms. Thacker. Next, we have Barbara Kenny. Mr. Thacker writes, Mrs. Kinney has been an asset in coaching teachers in ways to better use technology in their classroom, which is crucial during the pandemic. Additionally, Mrs. Kinney worked with groups of students to develop and utilize technology. Mrs. Kinney is continuously pursuing ways that she can improve herself to better others. She is a constant reminder of a lifelong learner. All right, Amy Kimmer. Ross Hudson writes, Mrs. Kimmer answers the call when asked to take on a new role this year for the West Clermont Online Academy. She continues to work for the success of our students in any capacity in which she serves. Ms. Kimmer's skill sets allow her to use multiple lenses to reach students and move all students toward their goals. Thank you, Ms. Kimmer. Next is Regina Mcneill, a reading specialist at Holly Hill. She could not make it tonight, but Principal Aaron Parker writes, Regina Mcneill is a dedicated educator. As a reading specialist, she is constantly finding ways to meet the needs of every reader, never gives up on them, and is the biggest cheerleader in reading and in life. She is an all-in Husky teammate. So thank you, Mia. All right, next we have Matt Spangler. All right, Mrs. Parker writes, Matt Spangler takes every moment of his lessons to engage his learners. He has a talent for getting students to dig deeper in their thinking and to ask questions. He has a heart to see students grow and to be challenged in their learning. Thank you, Mr. Spangler. Next, we have Andrea Taktok from high school. Christy Otten writes, Andrea has provided tremendous leadership in her department. She has developed the sports medicine curriculum to be a high-interest elective and has supported our Medical Explorers program in partnership with Mercy Health for students interested in pursuing a career in the medical field. She has mentored new teachers and is highly collaborative with her colleagues, seeking to continuously improve as a professional. Thank you, Mrs. Tucker. So, Board, I present to you our 2020-2021 Master Teachers.
Do you want us to move, Jeffrey? Okay, perfect. Just like that.
All right, everybody give a high five or wave to our board.
Thank you.
And finally, I'd like to thank the members of the Master Teacher Committee. The committee chair is Kim Sears. The administrative representative is Sue Littman Hall. The teacher reps are Renna Ford and Barb Kinney. So with that, they collect the information, they grade it, they coach them, they do it all so that we can have teachers stand before us as master teachers. So I just want to give a hand to thank them for their hard work. Thank you.
It is so wonderful to have staff here today. This board, every meeting, spends time thanking, but you might not ever make it to the end of the board meetings when you're watching them online, but if you don't, you will hear this board being so proud of what the teachers and the staff have done in the school district this year. So it's wonderful to be able to see you live in 3D and being able to celebrate with you tonight. So thank you for coming. We know you have a lot on your plate as we finish strong in the next 4 days, so you don't have to stick around, but thank you so much, and again, congratulations for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Keely Ackerman, who is an 8th grade math teacher at West Clermont Middle School. And you know, the definition of leadership is influence. And I'm proud to say this second-year teacher has had tremendous influence at West Clermont Middle School. Keely, as a newer teacher, was recognized recently by the Hamilton County Educational Service Center for the Innovative Teacher Award. And the reason that she got this award, or one of the reasons that she got this award, is her use of Desmos, which is an innovative tool brought to kind of bring her illustrative math to life, and with her Algebra 1 students. And she has also been so influential in using this tool that it's now something that is expanded throughout all of 8th grade. And so that is pretty impressive from a new teacher to be able to take a risk, try a new tool, and see that it has an impact on students, and then help others to see the impact and feel like inspired to try it. So with that, we'd like to recognize Keely Ackerman, 8th grade math teacher at West Clermont Middle School. Like mother, like daughter. Award-winning family. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It is.
All right, we ready to move on?
Yes.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the agenda. Everyone has been given a copy of the agenda days before the meeting. We've had a chance to vet it, ask questions, and I'm asking for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Rudy? First by Mrs. Delaney, second by Mr. Rudy. Discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion approved. Public commentary, do we have any cards?
We don't
No
have
cards.
We don't have any.
Okay. All right. Moving on, the consent agenda. Mr. Romano.
So Dr.
Actually-
Fultz is actually going to
Yep.
bring the first part, the personnel agenda.
Do we want to do both agendas back to back?
Just personnel 1.
Okay. All right.
Or this is part of consent.
Good evening, members of the board, Mrs. Adams, Mr. Romano. In front of you is the personnel agenda for Monday, May the 24th, 2021. On the agenda today, we have 3 retirements. One is Linda Dienert, who has been with the district for 18 years. I believe she's going to Florida to enjoy some sun and fun. Daniel Coyne has been with us for 13 years, and Cheryl Campbell will be retiring after 27 years with the district. We also have 10 resignations. On our agenda, we have the proposed hiring of Cheryl Lowe, the new assistant principal at Summerside Elementary. She comes to us from Yellow Springs, and she's here visiting us today, so hopefully you get an opportunity to speak with her. We also have the proposed hiring of 1 music teacher, 2 health and PE teachers, and 2 computer technicians. We have the proposed approval for 5 teachers moving from a limited contract to a continuing contract, 1 classified staff moving to a continuing contract, and 1 renewal of a principal's contract. We also have the proposed approval for 61 classified staff moving from a 1-year to a 2-year contract, 206 teachers renewing their limited contracts, authorization to amend the employment contract for Lance Perry, and 37 classified exempt part-time paraprofessional aide renewals. We have the proposed hiring for extended days for 2 of our district-level administrators to transition this summer, extended days for guidance counselors, school psychologists, case managers, and support staff for the next school year. Also included in the agenda is the proposed approval for 3 student workers, 2 home tutors to offer support this summer, supplemental fall coaching contracts, 2 unpaid leaves of absence, and 2 student teacher volunteers. And finally, we have the proposed stipend approval for summer school staff, elementary special education development work, and mentor teachers. I respectfully request that you approve the personnel agenda as submitted.
Oh, this is consent agenda,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
do you guys have any questions before David takes his seat?
I would just like to thank Mrs. Diener, is it
Diener.
Diener? Diener, I never knew. She was always wonderfully nice and helpful when I was here. And also Cheryl Campbell, congratulating her on her retirement. I don't know Mr. Coyne. I know the name, but didn't know him, but I worked with Cheryl for many years. So I wish them both luck.
Make sure they get that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Item 6.02 and the consent agenda will be school fees by Mrs. Preston.
Good evening. You should have all received a copy of the school fees for the 21-22 school year. A couple of things that I just wanted to point out in response to a few questions, just to clarify. There were questions regarding specifically the Alpha course and marching band at high school. Both of those are 4-credit courses, and so as such, those fees would not be counted towards the athletic cap. On the other hand, Winter Guard and Percussion Ensemble, those are not credit-bearing courses, and so those 2 courses would count towards the per-student athletic cap. So I did want to clarify that in case there were any additional questions about that. You'll notice that all of the fees remain the same, with the exception of world languages. We actually have a reduction in fees for those courses, given a reduction in the cost of supplies for those particular courses. And you'll note in the reason column that a few courses based on enrollment, students needing to take a required course, there are a few courses that are not being offered for the next school year. And then you also notice that there are a few new classes being offered for the first time next year. So if you don't see a fee in previous years, that's why, or if you don't see a particular fee this year, that's also why. Are there any questions, additional questions regarding any of the fees? Okay, great, thank you.
Well, and we have Mr. Perry here to bring item 6.03 contracts with some really great news associated with it.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. I'm here to highlight the resolution executed agreement with the vendor Innovation Foods. They are the vendor that Ms. McLeese has been working with, that she has been able to develop a program which they will be able to provide summer food boxes for students. So this is a form of a summer feeding program for us for the first time. These food boxes actually are shipped directly to the residents who opt in. All students below the age of 18 years old in the area are eligible. They will receive 7 breakfasts and 7 lunches. If the time is closed for the opt-in, the digital version, which will begin tonight after the board meeting. She's been working with Mr. Ryle on these communications. Even after that has closed, they are able to contact the Child Nutrition Department directly to opt in, so there is no closing date for this for the entire period of the program. This is a federally funded program for reimbursement, so therefore any dollars that are spent will be reimbursed fully from the federal government, so there is no cost to the district whatsoever. So with that, is there any questions or anything I can clarify?
And you said this was for any kid, any children in the district, whether they attend West Clermont or not, correct?
That's correct.
And do they have to qualify for a free reduced lunch or no?
No. Pretty cool program.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So we're
So
very
there-
excited about this.
So there's no lineups at a school
Drive-throughs.
pass out, drive-through, yeah.
I mean, I know that was an impressive operation.
It was very
I
impressive
know,
last
it
year,
was,
but yeah.
It's turned into a click of a button.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
Like literally sign up here and Amazon delivers it. Actually, I retract that. It's not Amazon, it's FedEx.
So what is our plan for making sure that that communication gets out to the right people? I know that it needs to go across the continuum, but
Correct.
there's a targeted population of our students and our families in our community. We want to make sure gets that communication. I'm sorry, we know we're going to be able to touch those that are students here, but what about those that may be enrolled elsewhere or not enrolled at all?
In working with Mr. Ryle, this has been going on for a few weeks. We held on making sure that the program was ready before we communicated anything. So I know in conversations with Jeffrey and with Tiffany that it's going to be a multi-prong approach immediately starting tomorrow, whether it's social media, website, engaging
calls.
with others. I mean, it's gonna be, we're gonna blanket it pretty hard.
Perfect,
Yeah.
thank you.
Excuse me, sorry.
Thank you.
Item 6.04 is the approval of minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes. These are from the meeting that was held on April 26th, special meeting on May 10th, or the work session on May 10th, and a special meeting that was held on May 17th. Item 6.07 is the
Mrs.
overnight field
Preston
trips.
is going to talk about the overnight field trip request.
Hello again. You should have each received information about our field trip request. It's for the West Clermont High School cheerleading team. The request is to attend the UCA camp that's held at Miami University. This is a camp that has happened in previous years, and they're excited about the possibility of being able to participate in this camp. It begins August 1st, and they would be returning on August 4th. All accommodations, lodging accommodations, are provided in the Miami University dorm rooms. Attached to the information that you received very much outlines the COVID protocols that are in place, all of the safety precautions that are happening to ensure cheer campers' safety. Students will be, parents will be providing transportation to and from, and the cost of, all of the meals and the lodging it's an inclusive cost for that student trip. They are, to the extent possible, handling, trying to offset the costs with fundraising, information, or fundraising dollars as well. And I think I just told you the wrong dates. I told you actually last year's dates, I think, maybe not. Hold on, sorry.
It's August
Yeah.
1st through.
August 1st.
Yeah, I
August
said those
4th.
correctly,
You said-
sorry. Yeah, I was double checking myself. So it's a pretty straightforward camp that's offered at Miami pretty much every year. So, any questions regarding this?
So this is the camp they went to last year at Great Wolf.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes, and that was a change in venue because in previous years that had been held at Miami's campus.
Yeah,
So they're able to bring it back there this year.
They've gone, this has been a historic camp
Yeah.
dating
For
back
years.
many,
Many
many
years.
moons. And it's a huge opportunity for our cheerleaders to mingle with other cheer squads and share ideas, and it's team bonding and building, and
There's a lot of colleges that come and
Yeah.
watch
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
activities and.
And they compete when they're there too.
they
Yeah.
compete when they're
Yeah,
there.
it's both learning opportunities as well as an opportunity to showcase the
Yes.
talent that we have and for students to have, our athletes to have an opportunity to be seen on a wider stage.
So the location at Miami University, is that historically where
Yes.
Yes,
when they've gone?
yes.
Yep.
Yeah, last year was the sort of the odd year
The COVID year.
for COVID, yeah.
Well, and I was researching, and it was being offered again at Great Wolf, so I wasn't sure. I mean, if Miami's
That was a
the,
smaller scale, and so
I
we're going
just,
to.
Since
if
Miami
Miami's the,
Yeah.
the historic place to go to and they can return back to there, I guess then that's,
Yeah,
maybe last year
absolutely.
Miami wasn't allowing.
And I think that
They
was
didn't have
probably part of it. It was
Yeah.
the university wasn't prepared for that
Yeah.
commingling yet.
Just like we have, they've mastered their COVID protocols as a university.
And historically, West Clermont has done very well at that competition cheer camp. Before it was West Clermont, Glen Estee went, Amelia went, they all.
So is the 43, is that our varsity cheer, or is that varsity and
It's
JV? or
all
is
of
it
them.
the
Freshman,
Yeah, it's
group?
all.
JV, and varsity, it's all 3 squads.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Great, thank you.
Okay.
Item 6.08 are the donations. There's 5 of them this evening. The first is from Adams Heating and Cooling, donated $500 to the West Clermont High School baseball team fundraiser. Next is West Clermont High School received the following donations for the Teacher Appreciation Cookout. The athletic boosters donated cookies. Teresa Stone donated plates, napkins, utensils, tablecloths, and water. Third, Skyline Chili, Cherry Grove donated 66 cheese conies and crackers to Holly Hill Elementary for the 5th grade end-of-the-year celebration. Fourth, Brittany Baldwin donated a $400 Starbucks gift card to Willowville Elementary to provide breakfast for the staff for teacher appreciation. And last, the Girl Scout Troop number 40378 donated clothing for students in need to Merwin Elementary. So it is recommended that those donations be approved, and we always certainly appreciate the generosity of those donors. Any questions on the donations? Item 6.09 is authorizing and establishing 403B and 457 plan providers. As the board knows, we do have a voluntary contribution to that tax shelter for employee savings. And annually, we ask that those providers be approved, which we're doing. We also notify the employees 3 times a year during the 3 open periods of those providers for both the 403B and 457 plan programs with that. Questions on those? Thank you. Item 6.10 are the financial statements, the bills paid, and the list of investments for the month of April. Those were provided to the board in their packet. Any questions on that? We'll go over some of that later on in the treasurer's comments.
I had one question about that. On the summary page, it says, item 8 was the board service fund, but there wasn't anything for the board service fund.
Correct, so.
So I didn't know if there hasn't been any activity in that this year, or just this period?
There has not. It's a
Okay.
standing agenda item.
Okay,
As you're
I just-
familiar with board policy, that those expenses be approved, so we list it as a standing item, and if there are expenses, we will place those on there.
All right, very
It's a great
good.
question, thank you, though. Okay. And then I believe, so that is, that's the final for the consent agenda. So those are items 6.01 through 6.10 as presented and recommended by the superintendent treasurer.
You've heard the recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Chumley, in a second.
Second.
Mr. Rudy. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Dr. Foltz coming back with part 2 of the personnel agenda.
Thank you. In front of you is the Personnel Agenda 2 regarding the retirement of Kim Hayden from the position of Supervisor of Educational Programs and the proposed hiring of Kim Hayden into the role of Supervisor of Secondary Special Education. I believe this move benefits our district in many ways. I see it as a demonstrating fiscal responsibility. Kim is a value add to our district in that sense that West Clermont will receive her wealth of training and experience, but at a level 2 beginner's administrator salary. Likewise, with Kim's skill set and hands-on experience in West Clermont, she's the perfect person to keep the continuity of support strong as we continue to build and stabilize our special education programs at the secondary level. And ultimately, we review this contract annually to see if this arrangement still fits our needs each year. So I respectfully request that you approve the Personnel Agenda 2 as submitted.
We're doing that one on its own.
Yeah, just making sure you didn't have anything you wanted to add to that before.
Nope, that you covered it very well, thank you.
You've heard the recommendation of Dr. Foltz. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Schaff, in a second.
Second.
Mrs. Delaney. Discussion? I wanted to point out that I've been consistent over the last 10 years of saying that I don't necessarily support the retire-rehire unless there's a business need for it, and that it's an appropriate place and time, and I believe that this is a place and time that would best suit our district and our community. So thank you for giving the detail that you did and researching it and providing the level of information we needed. Anything further to discuss?
It's a win-win situation,
It is.
in my opinion.
Yep.
I agree. I did think the general retire, rehire issue is sketchy, but I think you're right. When it's a proven addition or proven benefit for the district, where someone brings a skill set that's unique that we need now, then I agree.
Yeah, one of my roles in kind of overseeing all the programming is collecting data, collecting information, and trying to make the very best decisions. And we really see this as in the best interest of the district, as the value add that the talent that she brings, and our ability to scale and build capacity is our #1 priority, and she is the right person for that job. So.
Yeah, I think it's gonna allow us to have what we call in the healthcare world continuity of care. We're gonna have continuity of service because the area where she specializes is very sensitive, and we need her expertise to be able to train others down the road so that we have a plan.
And from what I understand, for the pool of candidates that would be available for that specialty type of employee, it would be hard to replace her.
Yeah, it's often difficult in those top challenging positions, but it's especially the continuity is probably the key, because she has, even in her few years of experience in West Clermont, she has the most institutional knowledge, and that's a premium for us right now.
So this is a different role that she will be in.
Yes, it's more supervisory in terms of a capacity building, because she'll be overseeing a teacher leader at the middle school and overseeing a teacher leader at the high school to play some of the role that she played in her previous role and her responsibilities. It's just that's one piece, but that's an essential one in capacity building. And additionally, working with the administrators to scale and build the administrator knowledge base, and really build a team approach around our service delivery model is our plan.
And that's different than what she's doing now.
Yes, it's an expansion.
Got it. Okay. All right.
And this fulfills any kind of obligation that we were to have if this were someone, say, as a superintendent, retiring and then being rehired as a superintendent, or in the same position that they held, that we're required to have hearing, but because we're rehiring her in a different
It's a different
position,
role.
right, we're satisfied, we've met our obligations as far as not needing to have a hearing.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anything further? Roll call?
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion approved.
Item 7.02 is the West Clermont High School candidates for graduation. And just a few minutes ago, we had a real live potential graduate in our audience. I wanted to point him out, but he left. Tyler Taktok was here. 607 names on that list for you this evening. And as you know, we have a big celebration planned on Friday evening at 5 o'clock and 8 o'clock. So the recommendation is to approve the graduation candidates for the West Clermont class of 2021, the last of the first. The first of the last. Did I say it wrong? I'm so paranoid.
Last of the
Last
first.
of the
Last of the first. I said it right. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you for the recommendation, and you've heard that. I'll put that on the floor in the form of a motion and ask for a second.
Second.
Mr. Schaaf, discussion?
I know that there, in my neighborhood, there's no less than 5 signs, and we're not allowed to have signs, and not because of our HOA, but I'm glad that they're putting their signs up anyway, because seeing the signs, and I hope that that continues with the high school on a yearly basis with the signs, but it's really good to see that, and that we get to get back to Cintas for graduation. Not that last year wasn't special, it was as special as we could make it, but I think it's better when we can have the pomp and
Confetti.
circumstance
We need the confetti.
and the confetti cannon,
Yes.
so it'll still make me jump.
We shouldn't have told Mr. Chumley about the confetti.
He'll still be surprised.
Thank you for that. Roll call?
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Schaaf?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion approved.
Item 7.03 is going to be brought to you by a cast of characters today. It is our strategic initiatives focus, and tonight it's going to be about FACE, and you'll learn all about what that means. and our communication presentation. So Mr. Ryle will kick off that, and then he will have some team members join him. Really, most of the members of the audience here have been participants in this new team formed this year, and we'll go with the other one first. And we are just so grateful that they're here live and in living color to show the support of this huge initiative in our school district and to share with you a little bit about the journey that we've taken this year as we've just reimagined family and community engagement. But first, Mr. Ryle to promote the work that's happened this year with lots of communication again, so.
Thank you, board members, for allowing me to be here this evening. As Superintendent Adams said, there were a lot of activities in the strategic initiatives and communication department this year. For those people that don't know me or my role, I'm proud to say that I lead the district work in communicating our strategic plan for the ongoing development of the public perceptions of the district, champion the West Clermont story, drive the district brand, and strive to move people beyond just consuming the information to being involved and engaged. So my areas of impact are kind of wide and varied, from monthly email newsletters, social media, to updating the Parent Wolfpack Hub and the district website, the quality profile and other printed materials, maintaining our district's YouTube channel, working with Superintendent Adams on updating her blog, the West Clermont Words, writing and submitting editorials to newspapers like the Clermont Sun, engaging others and communicating the work of our strategic plan, planning and coordinating district-wide events like ribbon cuttings and Love WC Week, monitoring and responding to questions, concerns, and feedback on the info@West Clare email accounts, and I'm the primary contact for media interactions. This year, with all the changes that have taken place, a lot of my new work has come in the area of communicating our WC Stop the Spread health and safety protocols and our return to school plan. Initially, being in charge of the COVID-19 dashboard and making sure that that was updated on a weekly basis and sending the close contact notifications, supporting the district leaders and school buildings in graphic design, communication, marketing, and signage. And in particular, one thing that I really was fortunate this year is that I got the opportunity to work with Mrs. Kenny and Mr. Jones at Willowville with some fifth graders on their problem-based learning projects, and had the opportunity to work with them on their communication and public speaking skills. So essentially, I presented to them on how to give a presentation.
And they were really, really good. They were very good.
It was a lot of fun to work with them. In my spare time, I have worked with the Onward and Upward Communications, helped supported the WC Wellness Connection launch. I send a weekly WC Wednesday staff update. Spearheaded the Together We Can and Together We Did end of the year celebration for 2020. Have worked closely with Superintendent Adams on further refining the graphic visuals for our strategic plan and the portrait of a graduate, and then also designing and producing items for district-wide events like our vaccination days and the WC Pi, our Partners in Education event. So back in September, I presented to you our 4 main goals for this year. And those 4 goals were to expand connection, improve engagement, increase our innovation, and deepen our trust. So for expand connection, our goal number 1, there were 2 parts to that. Our goal was to elevate parent voice at all levels and also continue our regular communication rhythm with the goal of extending our reach beyond parents. So how did we plan to accomplish this? Well, we will be establishing our district's key communicator team and also sending monthly newsletters like the WC Cares, WC Connects, and WC Community emails, as well as our State of the Schools special updates that went out each week in February, and also by keeping Superintendent Adams, her blog, updated. So how did we do? The Key Communicators Team, it launched in November of 2020. We had 22 parents or guardians that were invited by principals or nominated by them to be invited to this group, and 17 of those participated. We met several times this spring, and they provided feedback, they brainstormed, and they also gave recommendations on district initiatives, communication, and kind of the opportunity to give us feedback before communication went out there. In regard to our email newsletter subscribers, unfortunately, we did keep up our monthly communication rhythm, sending out significant number of newsletters, but however, our subscriber count did drop. From community members, there were 124 that unsubscribed and 259 families that unsubscribed. However, moving to our second goal of improving engagement, those members that did stay subscribed to our newsletters, their open rates went up significantly from community members to family to staff. So the people that did continue to receive our newsletters were more engaged with opening those messages. For social media, this was really an area of strength for us this year. We started the year with around 5,000 Twitter followers and went up to just over 5,100. So we increased that by 75 followers. And as far as Instagram, we went from 1,520 to 1,739, which was an increase of 219 followers. And then our Facebook account, we ended around just over 11,000 followers which was an increase of 869 people. So again, more people are engaging with us online, and that helps us as we tell our West Clermont story. Third, our increasing innovation. So we had several goals, or several parts to this goal. One was to develop some promotional materials, such as the quality profile, our roadmap for success literature, our mailers, our state of the school mailers, continue to expand implementation of tools like Final Forms and Remind, and then expanding our use of podcasts and videos and audio to engage with our families and community in newer ways. So how did we do? The podcasts are still an ongoing project, but as of right now, we have had 1,153 times that our Unmasked series podcast has been played. And for Remind, the staff members and family members sent just over 2.8 million messages this past school year. And on YouTube, we had over 13,000 views of our videos, and we added 153 subscribers. So again, continuing to expand the number of people that are interacting and being interested in what we're talking about in our West Clermont story. And last, our goal 4 was to deepen our trust. And we said that trust really is built through listening and responding. And so we implemented a number of feedback loops, some in the fall, some in the winter, here in 2021. So we did a return to school thought exchange. We did a communications audit in the fall. Then this spring, we administered the Net Promoter Score survey to staff and families. We did a thought exchange follow-up to that survey. We also did a thought exchange with staff about how things were going, and also with school principals and assistant principals, and with the staff in regard to our Onward and Upward plan. If you are interested in finding the results of all of those thought exchanges and surveys on the district website, if you click on District Communications and then Strategic Planning, on the right, if you're on a desktop, there is a link that says perception data. And if you're on a mobile device, that link is at the bottom. And I showed, our Superintendent Adams presented this, the results of this as part of a bigger presentation, but this is just the area of our district communication survey. If you remember from our workshop or our work meeting that we had last month, I talked to you about some of the results of that survey from families and from staff, which has helped us improve communications both now and looking into the future. So what have we done so far based upon people's feedback from that survey? One thing that we did to try to make things more clear for families is that we made clear when it's a message from Superintendent Adams, and then when it's a district update. And when it is a district update, we've worked to shorten it, to include bullet points, to include bolding the important things. We also have been focusing on the readability to try to make sure that we are speaking in a way that all of our families can understand. We've also worked to make sure that when we send out district things, we include the information if there's anything different for WCOA, for the Oaks students, or for preschool students. So looking forward, this summer, we will continue to send our district updates in June and July on the 15th and the 30th. And obviously with all of the changes that will continue to come, we will keep parents updated as those things move along. And then for sure in August, the communication will pick up as we get closer to school starting. I'll also be working to create some easy-to-use references explaining Schoology and our transition to Power School for parents so that they can easily find their students' work, their grades, the information, and so trying to take all of that and present it in a way that's easily digestible with parents. So that'll be another summer project. And then this next school year, as I said before, we'll be redesigning and relaunching our district website, expanding and updating the Parent Hub, and making a place for staff to have resources. We'll continue to refine our strategic plan and portrait of a graduate graphics. We will continue to increase our engagement rates on social media. We'll be doing more audio and video projects, and interactive content, and we'll continue to tell the West Clermont story as we work to move onward and upward. One update about the district website, I'm pretty excited, and we'll share with you in the coming weeks a development that happened within the last few weeks with that project, we're connecting with a West Clermont alumni, and there's some really cool possibilities that we could have with that. So excited to talk about that in the near future. Before we transition over to the Family and Community Engagement Team, what questions do you have concerning the strategic initiatives or communication from this year?
I don't have any questions. I'd like to compliment you in your staff of one. That how in the previous 4 or 5 years we've lacked in the area of communication, and that would have been the biggest thing that people complained about frequently, is not knowing what was going on and what was happening within the district. And I think we've clearly turned a corner on that. It's now being commented that you're over communicating, which we're not going to change.
Yeah.
But everybody knows what's going on, and there's no reason to not be informed. So thank you for all of your efforts. They're very much appreciated.
And I certainly, being a department of one, rely on lots of other people to support me in that work. So I cannot take only but a small amount of credit for that, because I just amplify what they do well. So.
Angela Bassler from the middle school, and then Tina Lupariello, my assistant, are kind of the magicians also behind the scenes. So a lot of people that aren't face-to-face with all this information are working magic back there.
I've made myself very acquainted with the app since our last meeting.
It's impressive, isn't it, Michael? More to come.
I would also like to comment that I know that you were one of our principals, and I think you're doing a fantastic job. And I think your experiences in the other role really help us focus Because if you bring in someone who doesn't understand a school district and how the schools operate, you can throw out a whole bunch of information and you can over communicate, but if that communication isn't direct or provide the information that's needed. So I think that you're very suited for this role, and I'm very pleased that you're in it and doing such a great job, you and your staff. And
Staff of one.
but no, I think you're doing an awesome job, and I really appreciate it.
Well, now we'd like to upgrade the presentation and bring up Mrs. Jeannie Mcneill, who will really get things started for us. I've been fortunate to, in some ways, reconnect into our work. We stayed good friends the last decade or so. Jeannie and I used to work more closely together when I was a teacher, and it's been a complete joy to reconnect and do some great work kind of supporting her leadership in the About Face team. So I'm going to turn this next portion over to her. Put the slides over.
That'd be great. President Brinkman and members of the board, it is truly a pleasure to get a few minutes to talk with you about something that's been happening since January, so really just for a few months. And many of the team members are here this evening, and I'm so proud of the work we've done together and just want to give you a little peek into what's been going on. So the whole topic of family and community engagement seems to be getting a lot of attention state and nationwide, and for good reason. I mean, we've had to reinvent the ways that we connect with our students and families and businesses, and we've spent the better part of the last couple of years figuring out how to do that better. But it's interesting, and a lot of the initiatives that I see represented, not just here in Ohio, but in other states too, it's taking a little bit of a turn, not to think about family engagement as we maybe traditionally have, where we can, and certainly Mr. Ryle exemplified this in his presentation about ways we can measure it, ways that we can collect data about that through surveys, and even on a school level, having parent nights and measuring, how much engagement was there by how many pizzas we bought or how many parking spots are filled in the parking lot. But instead of thinking about it that way, and that's really important, and also thinking about how the little interactions that we have with every single family member that we might talk with on the telephone who calls a school or calls the district office or brings their kindergartner for enrollment or moves to West Clermont for the first time with a student of any age. Those things are family engagement in the purest form. And that those little things, even though they seem small and they're sort of invisible and hard to measure, those emails that go back and forth, and like I said, just conversations that our staff and teachers might have at a sporting event or a cultural arts event, those things really matter. And those things are so powerful because they create feelings in people and perceptions about what we do in our district and how much we care about our students. So our team has sort of centered on those kinds of things. We couldn't pass up the chance to use the acronym FACE for Family and Community Engagement. It's just too perfect. So we used that to start with, but then we added the word about to the front of it, just because the phrase about face means the turning away from something a little bit and moving in a new direction, and we feel like that's what we want to do with family and community engagement. So just a couple of things that are the underpinnings of our group, and we've talked about several times when we've been together. One is we sort of have I guess teams have team colors and mascots. Our team has a metaphor, so we use this idea or example of a red thread as that invisible connection that we have with every student and family that we interact with. And this whole, excuse me, this whole idea of a red thread is used in many cultures and countries around the world, not just with like organizations or schools, but deep friendships or deep relationships you'd have with other people in your family, that connection or bond is invisible. And so we have likened what we do with families and community to that red thread. And we even have a little piece of red thread, actual red thread taped into the books we're reading together as a reminder. And that example really comes from the work of Ron Richard, and he's cited on that slide. One of the things that's happened with our group that I'm really happy that this occurred was just in a conversation, Superintendent Adams just mentioned the book, The Power of Moments. And I had heard of these authors before, they're brothers, Chip and Dan Heath. They've written several books that many organizations and businesses use to like re-examine and reflect on how things are done. But I had never read The Power of Moments. And so Mr. Ryle and I took a look at the book, and it was absolutely perfect for our group. And I know from past experiences in West Clermont, one great way to bond a group together is to have a common read. So we have been reading The Power of Moments, a section at a time since January. This coming Wednesday is our final meeting for this school year, and we'll finish up our conversation. And actually at the end of the book, there's an example of a school district that sort of tried to rethink or reimagine what family engagement might mean. So it's really ideal. So thank you, Superintendent Adams, for that. And I think Ellie Preston also has that book on her shelf as well. And also, our middle school, at least some of the administrators, I don't know too much about this, but I know that some other administrators in West Clermont are also using the book to try to help us reflect and think about what we can do better. And just so you know, in a little bit, we'll give a copy to each of you on the board as our way to let you know what we're trying to do, you know, to increase our awareness about. And we hope that maybe you'll have a few minutes, maybe this summer, for some reading about family engagement through the work of Chip and Dan Heath. So we were planning to show you a little video clip, but I think instead of doing that this evening, just know that Mr. Riley will have access to the link to watch that clip. So if you're interested in more information about this topic, be sure to watch that. It's only 4 minutes long, and it's actually delivered by one of the authors and gives you really the essence of this book. So we'd like to tell you a little bit about specifics about what we've done, and then we have a couple of members who want to share just a moment about a small moment about their experience with the team, and then we'd like to recognize the members who are here tonight just by asking them to stand.
So some of our projects that the About Face team has been working on, as Mrs. McGregor mentioned, our book study, which led us into trying to be putting ourselves in the shoes of our family members and thinking about what is their experience from the first moment they interact with West Clermont to when their child moves and graduates out of our school district. And so we've been working to create this parent journey map, and we did that by creating an empathy map of thinking about what do, in various situations that parents engage with us, what do they see, what do they hear, are they thinking, what are we saying to them, to really think about the entire experience for them. And then we took those empathy maps and the various topics, and we bravely conducted empathy interviews where each member of the About Face team contacted a handful of parents or community members that were connected to the various areas that we were looking at, and basically listened and said, tell us about your experience when you enrolled your child. Tell us about your experience the last time you called into a school. Do you have an example of a time that you emailed someone and how that experience was? And just let those people share with us their honest experience with our district. And then we are taking all of that information that we gathered and are creating essentially playbook pages for the district to help align across the district these areas and say kind of these are the common standards when we talk about the West Clermont Way. Here's what that means. And so we'll be creating playbook pages in the areas we've studied this year, including central enrollment, telephone and email communications. We've looked at not only virtual meetings, but also in-person meetings, especially when they're student-focused, and then parent-teacher conferences, and then school and district events. And we'll continue to expand our work to something that was mentioned at one of our previous board meetings about the transition years, to making sure that there is a consistent from elementary to middle school up to high school, those that families are continuing to be engaged throughout those big transition years. So I'd like to take just a minute to introduce some of our team members. They are very nervous about coming up here, but I assured them that you are wonderful people and will not throw anything at them. So I would like to
I didn't bring my vegetables today.
I'd like to first bring up Matt Spangler, who is one of our gifted intervention specialists at the GLC.
I'm a huge believer in using non-teaching experiences to think about and learn about how to become a better teacher. I didn't quite know what to expect when I attended my first About Faith team meeting, but I was confident that I could learn a lot from the many non-teachers in the room. There were secretaries and all sorts of different people that had different roles in our district. Hear them talk about how they routinely created moments to build connections with students and families inspired me to think about my own instruction. With the help from the techniques I learned during our About Face meetings and the power of Moma's book, I made one small tweak to an activity that we routinely did at the Gifted Learning Center. This tweak caused the excitement and the student participation in the activity to instantly increase. The activity went from a normal and routine to new and fresh. But the secret was the activity was not really new, but it was just repackaged to create a moment. I've been fortunate to be a part of the About Face team, and the people on this team have helped me to become a better teacher. I look forward to next school year when I have the opportunity to further implement the ideas I've learned about in the About Face team. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next we have Mrs. Rhonda Deatherage.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. Just going to talk briefly about my experience with the About Face team. Their mission is something that's near and dear to my heart. Positivity and wanting to create the best experience, not just for the kids, but for the people. It's my 21st year in the district, and I truly do feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. I enjoy it. So here I am. Who knows how much longer I'll be here. But this team, this book, is all about changing our experiences. We live in a society that is go, 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 and quick, 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 and how can you get to the next thing fastest? This book is something which, quite frankly, I think everybody needs to read. It will change you. Moments matter. The big moments, obviously, graduation, that's a big moment. We want that to matter. Everybody knows that matters. But the little moments matter. You know, when I see the mom come through my door and she's dragging her toddler on her hip and she's so frustrated and she's got to pick up her little one and go for an appointment, just a smile makes a difference, a kind word. So I encourage everybody to slow down, take a minute, and use those moments, use those words that matter. Reading this book gives lots of examples and lots of great stories. But every one of us has it in us to just take a minute and matter to somebody. There's a story in here that's so powerful of the teacher who had this student who had a great singing voice, but wasn't a typical singing voice. And she had previously been told by somebody just an unkind statement that made her kind of back up and was going to not really sing. This teacher saw potential in her, and just, it wasn't like this big, huge moment, just kind of took her aside and expressed to her that the power that she had, it changed this kid's path. So I guess that's what I have to say is let's all try to take a moment, put our phones down. Technology's great, but don't let it rule your world. Let's make a difference in not just the big moments, but let's create the moments. And I hope you guys all read this because it's awesome. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I think we should send that endorsement to the authors. They should hear what Rhonda had to say. So I'd just like to add, before we recognize our team members, that I think I can speak for Jeffrey Ryle when I say that the two of us don't bring years of expertise to this, only that we've been West Clermont teachers and administrators for many years. I think together we represent 50 years experience in West Clermont. But I know that we both feel like we're learners in this area, and I know I've learned more from the members behind me seated right now than I've been able to, bring to them to the meetings. So many of them couldn't be here tonight, but many could, and so I want to recognize them by having them stand. And as Mr. Spangler said, they represent all different roles and all different buildings and grade levels in our district.
Buzz in the room when you're in there is just absolutely amazing. From the energy that this team brings to this topic, the passion, the excitement, the connections. I mean, it's a little bit electric, and we're really looking forward to sharing some of the journey with the administrators that are invited to be a part of the meeting next. And I can't thank Jeffrey and Tanya enough for taking on this challenge. Because we knew that we needed to put a big foot forward. And they were very willing to jump in and help to lead this charge. And we're really looking to have it ripple out across the district through the influence of the people in this room and others. So just want to thank you guys.
Thank you.
Sure.
You guys have any more questions for them or anything you'd like to share?
I think Rhonda Deathridge is a perfect person for this team, because when I think of Rhonda, I think of kindness. And that is from the bottom of my heart, Rhonda. I've known you a long time. You're always kind. I've never known you not to be.
I don't know everybody in the audience, but I see two right here that I can say the same thing to, Mrs. Fields and Ms. Loudon.
Yeah, each member really brings something unique, and I have to say there's been many peak moments in the meeting, just sharing the stories, lots of laughter, even some tears, some really emotional kind of moments. These people are all in, and it's pretty impressive. So just thank you guys, and thanks for coming tonight. We know Monday nights, so this is the place to be, and so we're glad you're figuring that out too. Thanks, you guys. Finally, in just my comments, our cabinet team has been going around the district with donuts, and we're doing some cookies this week to celebrate the retirees. Also with us, we have a beautiful painting by our former superintendent, Gary Brooks, so talented, as a memento for all of our retirees, as just a special framed picture of a picture of a school or some special quaint place in Ohio or in the region. And it's just been a great moment. We have a lot of fun celebrating the people, maybe a little bit of roasting, but more just honoring of our people that, and I say, there's no amount of donuts or no amount of cookies that we could ever give anybody to really thank them for the investment of time with our students. And so it's hard to say goodbye, but it's also fun to honor these people. Just a reminder, graduation, again, on Friday, this Friday. It's also the last day of school. We have 2 showings, 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. at CentOS, and there will be a live link on our website and through social media, so that anybody who wants to be a part of graduation celebration can do that. And again, just a special thank you to our families and all of our staff for this very uphill battle, challenging school year that everyone has pulled together to achieve, and we've accomplished great things with our kids. So now kind of on to the next phase, the next leg of our race. We whipped up WCOA in about 4 to 6 weeks, and then summer school kind of came together in that same amount of time. We're serving over 1,000 kids this summer in just the elementary through middle school alone, and additionally we'll have students in high school doing credit recovery. So it's gonna be a really impressive operation. You approved a lot of teacher stipends tonight. And what we wanna let you know, with, June 2nd coming up as kind of the momentous day of opening up, we've got the challenge of kind of thinking through, what will that look like in schools? We're hearing there aren't going to be specific guidelines given to school, and there will be flexibilities given to school. So in our thinking, we've been just processing as a team, thinking that, you know, the safety protocols that parents and families have been so strong about all year, checking and making sure kids are not coming to school ill, washing hands, all those things are still going to be very important. But we do have the question of masks, and what will that look like in summer school? And we know our ratios will be much different than a regular classroom. We also know that contact tracing and quarantining is still going to be a part of summer. That is not a guideline from the governor that gets released. That's part of the infectious disease control and work that the health department always does. And so we're just really processing all this and thinking through what's going to be best to serve our students and our staff well. So I just wanted to see if you guys had any questions or thoughts about that as we gear up for summer school to begin here in a few weeks. Well, I guess it's days now, isn't it? I'm saying weeks, like, yes. So it's coming up.
I shared with you on the phone earlier today that I'm so looking forward to life getting back to normal, for whatever that looks like, but for us to get back to being able to see each other without the masks, not require kids to possibly wear them all the time, and perhaps allowing it to be more parental decision, you know?
Thank you. Anybody else have any thoughts they want to share or questions that you have regarding summer school and the protocols?
My opinion on the masks, I waver. I feel like, Tammy, you want to get back to normal, but my concern is most of the children probably are not going to be vaccinated. And the recommendations from CDC are not clear when it comes to schools and children. It's fairly clear when it says if you're not vaccinated, you should wear a mask. So part of my concern is that also the mask doesn't necessarily protect me as a wearer. I mean, it does offer a little bit of protection. What it does do is it helps protect the people in my 6-foot vicinity if I were to have it and pass it along. I don't know. I mean, I'm concerned of mandating and people being upset, and you know, if that's what keeps them out of summer school that they need, that, you know, I don't want necessarily that to happen, but I also don't want to send someone, you know, have someone who's asymptomatic and spread it to some other people, and then they spread it to people in their house or grandparents, and you know, it's inconvenient, I understand, but you know, and we're nearing the end of the pandemic, but we're still in a pandemic, so it's, you know, I don't know. I know the desire to get back to normal, and I see it every day. You know, you just go out and about, and people are done. You know, people are over it, and I get it. But you know, having had COVID, and you know, it's not pleasant, and you know, and it's potentially deadly for many vulnerable people, and I don't know. It's a hard line to walk.
I think we're nearing the time that, as adults, if you have not gotten the vaccine, it's a decision, because there's access everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
I think the research as far as children go, like, it's pretty much shown that that's not really the spreader, is through the youth. So what we're concerned about, in my opinion, is the adults, and by this point, I think we've had a chance to get the vaccine. So, I mean, I'm on board with parents making a decision about their kids, but that's just my 2 cents.
Well, I would agree with you on that. I think, you know, I'll give you an example, however. My kid's soccer team, my kid came home, he had already had COVID. This was months ago because I gave it to him. But he came home, he had to come home from school sick. Didn't necessarily have a fever, had, you know, tummy issues and all that. But we come to find out that 4 other kids on his soccer team had the same thing. They don't wear masks while they're practicing, but, I mean, you can tell it right there. I mean, the soccer team gave it to him, and guess who got it then? I got it, because I had the same kind of issues. It wasn't as strong for me, but, I mean, you know.
Well, we share tonight, just because the complexities of this have, you know, they're not going away, and there are extreme positions on all these topics. What my commitment to you all, as our policy allows us to be able to enact the mask policy if we need to, you know, when we need to, when we're required to, or whatever. But I share with you that I'm, you know, every week, it's been true since March of last year, every week I'm meeting with Hamilton County Health Commissioner and the superintendents for Hamilton County. I'm meeting every week with the Clermont County Health Commissioner, Dr. Fagans, as well as the superintendents in Clermont County. And also, not every week, but every other week I'm meeting with a statewide connection, and then about once a month I'm with a national connection. So I will continue to do my research in all those areas that's based on what the experts are saying. It's likely that I'm seeing that there will be different decisions made in different districts. And so we'll just be weighing everything out to make the best decision for our students and our staff, knowing that it's going to be very complicated post-June 2nd in a world that looks very different inside a school versus what happens every day up and down the streets and in the stores and all that. So it adds another layer of complication. It doesn't seem that we're going to be getting direction in the way that we did for school. So we will, you know, continue to weigh all that out, and I'll keep you informed, and we'll make sure, like through Mr. Ryle, that our parents are well informed before summer school starts.
I appreciate it. I mean, I think making the decision based on the data and based on the opinion of experts and not politicians is sound and the way to go.
Well, I think it's important that perhaps that we speak to our staff and see how they feel. I would hate for us to be sitting up here thinking that we want things to get back to normal and that our teachers are comfortable with it being a parental decision, but yet they're having to go to work every day and then possibly being exposed and, you know, kind of get their 2 cents as to how they feel about it being a parental decision, you know? Just to get their buy-in or support or lack of.
All right, thanks you guys. That's all the comments I have for tonight, and I'm just looking forward to Friday. For many reasons, beyond graduation, it will be our last day of school. It's very exciting. All right, Mr. Romano.
All right.
Mr. Armand.
Thank you. So under the treasurer's business, there's 3 items before the comments. There's first one is item 8.01. That's a board action item. It's authorization to select Sedgwick Managed Care of Ohio as the district's managed care organization for workmen's compensation. I bring this before the board because I think it's an important role. Managed comp, which is Sedgwick Purchase Management, Comp Management, has been our MCO for quite some time. But the role is pretty important because it assists us in filing those claims with workman's comp if we have an employee that's injured. 2, they ensure that that employee gets the medical treatment that they need. And the third thing is that they really facilitate that individual getting back to work. They've been our MCO for a period of time, I believe over a decade. The district has a fairly low rate. That's good and bad. When I say bad, only because within the last year and a half, when we get reimbursements back or dividends from the Bureau of Workmen's Comp, it's based on our premium. So in certain circumstances, one could think that, you know, maybe it's good to be bad because you get a greater dividend back. But we're proud of the fact that we have that low rate, and that's good for the district. And I think and part of that is with the help we get with this MCO to do that. So the recommendation in 8.01 is the authorization to select Sedgwick Managed Care of Ohio as the district's MCO.
You've heard the recommendation of the treasurer. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Chumley, and a second?
Second.
Mrs. Delaney. Discussion?
Will this be this will be an ongoing contract, or is this, it need to be renewed annually?
Thank you, that's a good question. So every year it's required that we reappoint them.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Roll call?
Thank you. Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion approved.
Okay. And then the next two items are connected together. There's a presentation on the 5-year forecast, and then there's a request for the board to approve that 5-year forecast. And so I'm going to put this up there, and if you don't mind, I will go out in front to speak. Do that.
Do you mean to do it? You can.
Mrs.
I
McGregor,
like
take
the
it.
Tanny walkout.
That's right. Get her.
It's in their carpet bag.
So, first of all, and I think I've been trying to be pretty consistent with this, with a lot of the financial presentations, it's really to show some appreciation and gratefulness in 3 of the areas. First, to the residents, it was a great feat a year ago in May to have that levy pass, but also their continued support, especially during these trying times. Secondly, to our employees, you know, sometimes we don't recognize them enough, but the commitment that they give to our students and to the district needs to be recognized as often as we can do that. Third, you know, is appreciation to the board and to the superintendent and the leadership team. As you know, I've been in this business for quite a few years. I guess it's quite a few decades now. And one of the most positive things I can see with the school district is the ability not just to strategically plan, but to move forward and to execute on those plans. And one of the things that you've seen, it was only since November that we did the last forecast, right, just 6 months ago. But the amount of things that happened program-wise and financially within those 6 months probably hasn't happened, you know, in 3 or 4 years if you think about, you know, school finance time with that. So I'll give you the example. With the Onward and Upward program that was put together by the superintendent and the team, the ability for that team to come together, identify the positions that were needed, and for Mr. Foltz to work with that team and hire those people and the board, you know, to be on the same page and move through with that is a pretty tremendous feat when you think about that in a short period of time. So to have the strategy and to execute on it is really a pretty good feat to do. What's this 5-year forecast? As you as board members know, it is a pretty important document. It's a planning tool. It's not a perfect tool, all right? We're not perfect in our projections with it. It's required that we do this twice a year, once in November, an update in May. It looks back 3 years historically. It looks forward on the current year plus 4 more years. It's the basis where we approve what we spend, okay? Not only for the current year, but as sometimes commitments are made in the current year, those commitments go out 1, 2, 3, 4 years. In 4 years, in the example of collective bargaining agreements and certain contracts that in the past several months you've approved, they're sometimes not just single-year contracts. Mr. Schaff noted that in asking with the MCO tonight, okay? That's kind of an ongoing thing, although we approve it every year. So it guides, you know, our ability to sign and say, yes, we do have the money to spend things. That forecast is really broken down into 3 parts: our revenues, our expenses, and what's left over. What's the difference between revenue and expenses, and how does that impact our cash balances with that? So with this update, with the 5-year forecast, just real briefly, we'll look at revenues. The good news on the revenue story is when we look at where we were last May to where we are today, it's a very positive impact. On the revenue side, it was really driven by 3 things. The property appraisal came in higher than expected. That added revenue to the district. The second thing is the governor in late December, early January, came back, and, you know, the infamous phrase of reduce the reduction, so we got another $900,000 back that we didn't think we would get. And as mentioned a little bit earlier, the Bureau of Workmen's Comp, through encouragement from the governor, provided dividends back to the district, and that approached during this fiscal period about $900,000. So on the revenue side, when I said things really, you know, we had a lot of activity from November to May, you know, there was a nice increase in funding for this fiscal year. Except for the reduction and except for the workman's comp increase, those tax revenues are expected to continue. So a very positive thing, you know, with that, to do that. Just roughly, again, and I mentioned most of these, you know, the appraisal came in higher, the budget, state budget where it was reduced, money was given back to us. As we look forward, we're looking at levels on the state foundation to be what they were in FY19. And although that's disappointing because it's 2 years past, right? Given the circumstances of the pandemic and what it did to the economy, that's a positive thing to do it with that. A shift, though, and we can kind of see it with the next slide, and I'll talk about that in a minute, is that shift from how much locally we're providing and how much the state is providing, and I'll show that in a minute. The other positive news is, and this is a little bit of some unprecedented times, where because of the pandemic, because of what it had done to the economy, the federal government has supported very directly public schools in this country. They did that through several different efforts, but the two big ones going forward right now is what we call ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. ESSER is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief, okay? Those two acts will give this district close to $14 million, okay, to spend up through FY24, okay? Why is FY24 kind of important? Okay, although this is not in the forecast, okay, because the forecast is just the general operating fund, those funds are allowed to be spent in similar types of activity, okay, with that. But there's a cliff there. That ends, okay, in FY24. So that $14 million does not come back to us, okay? But it's nice to have that supporting our activities and our efforts to do that. So that's great to have. So, you know, there's a lot of things in the document that is in the board agenda. Those documents will be placed on the board's website after the approval this evening. But one of the, you know, the trends that I wanted, you know, the board to see was the share between the local and the state on the funding, okay? And it's part of a concern I have that I'll get to in a minute. So if we look backwards, okay, FY18, the local revenue was about 53%, state revenue 47%. In FY21, two things occurred. We started receiving the proceeds from the levy that was approved, and then we also had an increase in the property appraisal. As we look forward and we extend that out, even the very next year in FY22, when we get the full effect of the levy collection, that shifts from 59% to 41%. And as you look forward to FY24 and 25, it's a 60-40 split, okay? So where there was a little bit closer sharing, almost 50-50, going a few years back, now we're about a 10% swing, you know, between local and state funding, okay, with that. My nervousness comes, you know, from some uncertainties going forward. One is if there is some negative impact to the local economy, okay, and property values go down, that's a direct impact to us, okay? I think it'll sustain itself as we go forward, though. But two is, you know, what's going on at the state level, okay? We hear a lot about the Fair School Funding Plan and what's going on there, okay? And as I look where the legislation, the Ohio legislators are looking at pumping over time an additional $2 billion into K-12 education, which is a great thing. The big thing that I get concerned about is, okay, what are we going to get? And we look at some initial projections. Our ability is just, our result is just we're sustaining that. We're not getting, you know, the 14 to 20% increases that some other districts are getting. We're getting close to zero, okay, from the state. Go back to that trend of the 40-60 split, okay, that's more pressure locally, okay, that concerns me, okay, to do that. Why is that important? We need to be advocates. We have to pump up our advocacy with that. I think our legislators expect to hear from me, from the superintendent, and from board members. The transparency that I think we bring to the community, the communication efforts that Mr. Ryle and the superintendent and the board brings to this community, we need more advocates than just the 7 of us. We need a community of advocates to really encourage what needs to happen for state funding, okay, to do that. So that's an important part that I think to do it. The other item down there is really seeking alternative revenue sources. You know, prompted by the superintendent, Mr. Overby really is on board with a grant funding consultant, so we can keep looking at getting funds from other sources than we currently have. So that's a positive thing that's going on. But if there was one concern I had is really what's going to happen with the state funding formula, what's going to happen not just with this biennium, but if a formula is approved and we're pumping money into it from the state level, what's the result to West Clermont? That's what's important to me. On the expenditure side, I think positive things again, where the revenue increase, our expenditures, to say that we held the line is an understatement. It was great to have Mr. Perry come back, Mr. Priest come back and say, hey, there's extra funds in my budget, in our budgets, and we can provide that back. We don't have to spend those funds with it. That was a big plus to our expenditure for FY21. It also helps us look forward FY22 through 25. Again, keeping, you know, the mindset that we made a commitment to the community, that we're going to be through FY24 with that. So that's a positive thing to have happen in this district. The other point that I can say, and it's probably a new point, on our insurance benefits, we did estimate about 5 to 6%. That is what's built into the forecast. And from the meeting that I had last week, I think those numbers will hold, and I think it will even be less of an increase as we move into FY22. So again, some positive with that as we go forward. So expenses, although there's positive news with that, expenses have a tendency to just annually increase, right? Wages, benefits, kind of the COLA, cost of living, you know, with our expenses kind of goes forward. That typically grows at a faster rate, okay, than revenues. Revenues kind of stair-step up. You pass the levy, you collect that. State and local kind of stay flat, but revenues have that line that kind of angles upwards all the time, basically, for that inflation. Again, mentioning ESSER, that's going to be a help to us. You heard me back a couple months, you know, as we led into the onward and upward, that we need to we need to match our expenses, one-time only expenses with one-time revenue. If it's an ongoing expense, we need to match that with ongoing revenue. And I think my third kind of rule there, or suggestion, recommendation there was, but we also need to be flexible. The ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funding helps us be a little bit flexible, while at the same time helping us with the onward and upward and other things that may come about that we need to go forward with. So kind of a positive message again with that. So as you can see, as I've mentioned, expenses have a tendency of following that cost of living increase every year. I think what's also an unknown, excuse me, what also may be an unknown is, you know, what's going on with our enrollment. You know, we do see that as increasing, so we really need to keep looking at our enrollment, our facility capacity, and what that enrollment does with our staffing, okay, what we need to do to staff the classrooms with that. So, challenges, again, just maybe to highlight on the expense side, okay, there was a learning loss that fell on top of a learning gap, okay? We recognize that there was a learning gap before COVID, but because of the way we had to change the way we educate kids, there was a learning loss that occurred, through no fault, I think, of anybody's, but just because of an outcome of the pandemic. So that is there that we need to remedy over the next few years. And then there's that continued pressure, and if we look at, this country bringing people back to work, okay, and maybe not a lot are coming back to work, that pressure is on us stronger than it's ever been, okay? I know Mr. Foltz and the group, it was great that we went out early. It was great the board allowed us to go out early and hire staff, okay, to kind of beat the crowd on that. But as we go into the future, that pressure is going to continue for us to retain the people that we have, the good people that we have. You just saw them here tonight, right? And also to attract more people to this district with that. So kind of two pressures that are greater than maybe in the past with us. Positive news on the cash balances, okay? As we look forward, and you have positive revenue variance and you have a positive expense variance, that adds to our cash balance. When you follow the rules of that, if it's one-time only revenue, you're not going to put expenses on that are one-time only to the general fund. You'll seek other sources, which we did with the ESSER money. But if it's ongoing revenue, we can match ongoing expenses with that. So our cash balances are better than what we expected. There's continued pressure on that difference between revenue and expenses with that. But I think as we look forward over time, a saving grace for us are those ESSER funds, which we can look at how do we help backfill, how do we look at, if you look at FY, and I'm sorry that the column titles aren't on that chart, but if you look at the last two columns, which are FY 24 and 25, and those are negative numbers, I believe that as positive things happen, as we do some smart use, strategic use of our ESSER money, we can bring that differential down, okay, to do that. So I think it's a positive forecast as we're going forward. Again, well, let me get to this slide. So as we look at those cash balances, which is the green line at the bottom, from 21 through 24, we're kind of flat, go up, and kind of flat a little bit. It goes down in 25, but I think we can remedy some of that as we go forward. If you look at the revenue and expense lines, they're kind of, the line crosses in FY 23. But, our ability to keep those matching each other, keep that gap small, okay, or parallel each other, I think is our strategy to go forward with. As you can see with this, especially in FY 22, 23, and 24, that's a comparison of revenue expenses. They're closer together, okay? So the closer we can keep that, all the better. I know, Mr. Schaff, you noted this, I think, in a previous presentation with the 5-year forecast, that the true day cash balance, how much do we have on hand to cover our expenses with it? Optimal is to have 2 months, okay? We want at least 30 days, and we stay close to that through FY 24. As that cash balance goes down in FY 25, we dip below that 30 days. With that, we found out this year, right, we had to do a cash flow borrowing. 2 reasons why. One, it was a low cash point, but 2, because there was, unfortunately, a delay in the tax collections. We really did the whole issue of 11.2 million, so that was cause for that. So our strategy is to help raise, if you look at the tail end of that, from 12 days, the greater we can increase the cash balance, the greater that can go up. We need to look at. On the cash balances, we want to target getting closer to the 60 days. Okay, I think that's an optimal thing. If we can get 30 and over, that's a good position to be in. And again, stress it for the third time, the smart use, the strategic use of our ESSER 2 and 3 money can get us there as we go forward with that. I already mentioned on a call to action, ourselves being advocates, and part of that goes beyond just the 7 of us, but how do we engage others to help us with that message? To do that, we need to continue to look at alternative revenues, and I think we're on the path for that, which is great. We need to continue to look at how we spend our dollars, to do that. And, you know, one of the messages that I want to start giving is that as we spend that dollar and as we look at budgeting, are we getting $1 plus worth of it? We use that phrase investing in ourselves rather than just spending. And so as we have additional dollars, how can we make that $1 spent last more than that current year? Investing in either in our people, our processes, our infrastructure, but how do we make that last more than just 1 year with it? I think the other thing on the call to action that we need to do is, again, with our onward and upward plan, that wasn't just a 1 year thing. It did leave some flexibility in what we need to look at in future years. But again, compliments to the board, superintendent, and the staff for putting that plan together and executing on it as we go forward with it. I did a lot and so many slides. I don't know if you have any questions on that. There's plenty of material in the agenda. We're going to put that on the website, not just for the board, but for the community to look at. We're open. I'm open if anybody outside the board calls and has a question to go over that with them. But it's you know, from a standpoint of schools historically and maybe where this district was a year and a half ago, it's a positive forecast for this district. Questions? Okay.
Great job.
I'm sorry you don't get the applause like the master teachers and the
That's okay.
face people.
That's all right. The applause was no questions. So one thing I want to make sure I didn't forget after that presentation is the board's approval of that 5-year forecast. So item 8.03, I'll put my mask back on. 8.03 is a resolution requesting the board approve the 5-year forecast and further authorizing me to submit that forecast to the State Department of Education.
You've heard the recommendation of the treasurer. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Schaaf. Seconded by Mr. Chumley. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Schaaf?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
5 yes, thank you. A couple comments with that. First of all, need to thank again 2 groups. One, my assistant treasurer, Tony Meyer, and the payroll director, Carolyn Jaffrey. Last week, that's one group. The second group is the administrative staff and some of the support staff. We did a business process review. It was a pretty intense 3 days where we had a consultant from Power School look at our operating system financially and different systems connected to it. Thank the staff that outside my office that participated in that. I will tell you that the compliment that was given to me, I mean, I don't think I shared this with the superintendent, but they were impressed with the level of participation of the leadership and the different departments. You know, this is something they do every day, and they typically identify that it's a struggle to get others outside the treasurer's office or the finance office into the room. And they were pretty impressed with the support of the leadership and those outside the department that came in. The first phase of that business process review was that intense 3 days, you know, to core dump to what we're doing. They will come back with some recommendations. One of the differentiations that we did with that business process review was build in not only the recommendations, but kind of the guide map to making sure that we implement these. I've seen a lot of organizations go through that effort or that activity, ultimately just to have the recommendations, but then the recommendations to sit. And part of what I wanted to make sure happened, that we act on those recommendations as they come forward. So I was glad to have that happen. I'm looking forward to June. A couple things that will be coming forward. Plan on having a finance committee meeting. In June, we have to adopt the FY 21-22 budget at a high level that was put into the forecast, but we'll do that. and there are some closing things that we have to do as we close our fiscal year, June 30th. So May is a busy month, I think, as we close schools. And the fiscal office is a very busy month as we close the fiscal year for the school district. So, but that's all I have.
Board business. Mr. Chumley, you want to start?
Sure. Where to start? It was a meaty meeting. I liked it. I love these meetings where we kind of get to honor and celebrate our teachers, staff, and community. I want to thank those involved with About Face for what they do and for joining us tonight. I want to thank and congratulate the master teachers for everything they do. They're a big reason why we're such a great community. I want to thank Ms. Lowe for joining us tonight. And I want to congratulate all our students who are graduating this Friday. I look forward to celebrating with them.
And this will be your first,
Actually, yeah.
your first soiree at the Cintas Center.
I'll look out for these cannons.
There will be no
No,
cannons.
there's no cannon.
Mrs. Delaney.
Nobody going for.
Right.
I too would like to congratulate the class of 2021. Unfortunately, I have a family obligation and won't be at graduation, but my heart will be with you all. It's been an exciting year, and for these graduates, it's been a tough year. But as I said in a post to the seniors a couple weeks ago on the senior page, you guys are the light at the end of the tunnel, and we're almost getting there, and that bright light is your future. So engage in that future. Always remember that here is your home, and we're always here to help. And no question is ever a stupid question. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Know when you need help shows a sign of intelligence. So please reach out, and congratulations. I want to thank our teachers and staff, everyone from the top to the bottom around the district for making this crazy year phenomenal. Mrs. Adams and her leadership team and my fellow board members, we laid some ground rules out there, and we checked off the boxes, and we did it. And it's exciting to say that we did it, because we made it look effortless. And we couldn't have done it without everybody, from our smallest student to our biggest student, and all of our teachers and community members and families in between. Thank you, and congratulations to all of our recognition teachers this evening. We can't do it without being better. And I look forward to the rest of the week and next year. You're up.
Mr. Schaaf.
I'll jump on the thank you bandwagon and thank all of our master teachers and About Face team members, our graduates. I know that this class boasts a number of neighbors and friends, even some classmates. When I graduated high school, their youngest daughter is graduating. I think she's the student council executive president or something like that. But so I feel a connection with the graduating class this year, because there's so many people that I know. And I was hoping that there would be one additional recognition tonight. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. I know that our 3 assistant superintendents were nominated for the Chamber Foundation's Education Award, Salute to Leaders. Unfortunately, they did not win. The Clermont County Service Center won that award, but I know that our assistant superintendents, Mr. Overby, Dr. Foltz, and Mrs. Preston were nominated for that, and well-deserved. But
Winners in our book.
yes, indeed. But again, thank you to Mrs. Adams and Mr. Romano and your staffs for making sweet lemonade out of sour lemons, or out of sour lemons this year. And we did the best that we could with what we had, and I think we surpassed any kind of expectations that anyone would have had going, from a pandemic to staying in a pandemic for over a year. So thank you all very much.
Mr. Rudy.
I would like to congratulate the graduates and everyone that was recognized tonight. And Mr. Ryle, thank you very much for your presentation. Very interesting. Learned a lot. So that's it.
A couple recognitions in addition to everything that everyone else has said. I'd like to thank the high school administration that pulled off the junior-senior prom and other activities that were very important to our students after the dismal junior year, sophomore year, that they came back with a strong, spring season for activities. They did a fantastic job. I'd also like to do a shout out to our athletic boosters who pulled off a lot of fundraising over the last couple months and was able to deliver almost $18,000 in scholarships to our students, which exceeded pre-COVID levels. So kudos to them for pulling it off in a very short period of time. And like to thank everybody who gave them a hand in either volunteering their time, money, and support. And wanted to mention that there's only a fraction of people that volunteer for that. So that was a lot of work by very few people. And I often think of what kind of impact we would have if half of the people we have in our community and our family of students enrolled would engage themselves. We'd hit it out of the ballpark, and it's all for the students. And this year, like I said, I don't remember the number of athletic scholarships that they gave, but it was almost $18,000.
It was 17. They gave 17 individual scholarships.
Isn't that nice?
In varying amounts of.
Yeah, yep. So thank you to their efforts. We do have the need to go into executive session. So I would like to make a motion to withdraw to executive session for the consideration of employment, appointment, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee, and ask for a second.
Second.
Any discussion needed? Before we take a vote, I want to say that we're going to go into executive session. We're going to withdraw from there. We're not going to come back out for any kind of decision or vote. So we thank everybody for joining us. Roll call.
Sure. Mrs. Brinkman.
Yes.
Mr. Rudy.
Yes.
Mr. Schaff.
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney.
Yes.
Mr. Chumley.
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion approved. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll see you next time.